Well, greetings, Jackie. The last 4 months have been remarkable for you. Jackie hails from Omaha, Nebraska, Creighton University, the great Midwest, all the way here to the beautiful Shenandoah Valley. Any surprises in this change of scenery or change of venue?
Yes, I am obviously loving the mountains. As many of you know, I'm originally from Puerto Rico, so having the mountains is a great plus for me. And I've also loved the way that even in a pandemic and through Zoom, so many of you in the middle of finals and getting ready for finals really gave me the time to have conversations. And so that was actually a surprise and a testament to what type of community EMU actually is and how committed they are with DEI.
And to that point, Jackie, remind us what you did upon arriving on April 1 to get to know the university community. There were only 5 weeks to graduation, so how did you leverage that time with engaging students and faculty and staff?
Yes, so I did start it on April 1st. I guess April Fool's Day, I know how to choose the dates. And what we decided was, and Zoom was an option, so sorry, Byron, it did help a lot for me. It actually did a lot of Zoom conversations. I privileged and started working with students because I know the role, the important role they had in making this position possible. And so I just checked before coming here this morning, I met with 12 student organizations and their main leaders. And between one-on-ones with faculty, staff, and students and alums, and some more smaller group conversations, I've met with about 90 to 100 people already. But there's many of you out there that I have not met, and so I am hoping to please reach out and let's have a conversation at any time that you have.
Jackie, you have an amazing aspirational vision for EMU around DEI. You have said, EMU can become the most welcoming university in the world. And at the same time, you seem to understand realistic action steps. You've also said, we must dream big and act small. Can you explain those two?
Sure. I'm a big fan of dreaming as high as we can. And after being part of this community for 5 months, I have no doubt that we can really make that possible and happen. I've already seen so many initiatives that have started, and so what I mean by thinking small is, yes, we do have a lot of work to do, and yes, we're not as inclusive, and not everyone has a sense of belonging as we aspire that everyone has. But there's also a lot of really good people that have been doing a lot of work, not only through Cody, but through many other individuals that are part of this community, and agendas that have started. I think the curriculum is one of them. There's a major revision now undergoing for the core EMU curriculum, and that speaks to how faculty listen to what our students had to say in terms of decolonizing the curriculum, and how that some of the students that were BIPOC or LGBTQ were not seeing themselves in the curriculum. And so those are small steps that started with someone posing the question, people getting together, organizing, faculty listening, administration listening. We're not there yet, but we are getting there. And so if we want to see the change that we actually want to be and we want to have for EMU, I think that's how we start. We bring in really good ideas, and then we get together, we have conversations. It may seem like we're not doing much, but I have seen how it has moved this community towards a more inclusive and belonging community.
And one last question from me, and then I'd invite you to be thinking some questions that you'd like to ask Jackie and come down here to the microphones. At the EMU board meeting in June, we devoted spotlight topic conversation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our trustees were quite taken, Jackie, with your vision and strategy and systems approach. And I wondered if you could give us a snapshot of what this is. I know you've provided a slide for us, and I want to get that. Just talk through it in a general sense, and then be coming up to the microphones.
So I'll be short so that there's some time for questions. But basically, at the core of my vision is what in many of my one-on-ones and conversations, I saw that there was a lot of willingness and desire to really be all that we can be and live up to our vision and mission statements, and that something was holding us, and that was a little bit of fear from both ends, those who are from underrepresented and traditionally minoritized groups, as well as those that own the privilege and have had the power. And the fear came out of really not knowing how to move forward, not perceiving like not having the skill. And so my theory of change has to do with, at the center, if you see in the screen, is that I think belongingness, relationships, and power are at the core of how we impact our entire community. We need to learn how to share power. We need to learn how to bring people into our vision and use power with, as opposed to power over. And as we do that and we build relationships across all of our university, faculty, students, staff, alumni, fundraising, just about every single area of the university, we will start infusing DEI throughout our entire system. And that, in my vision, the best way to do that is really through building relationships across differences. So reaching out to those folks that we feel maybe we don't have anything in common or have little in common, and really trying to get together and see what emerges from those conversations. And so that would be a lot of the planning as we move forward for the next year that I have envisioned. Really strengthening our things of belongingness, of campus safety, psychological safety, and having those conversations so that we can then have a really strong sense of belongingness and moving forward together.
I invite your questions or comments around this DEI space, this new day at EMU. We've talked before about how our new vision statement puts us on a DEI trajectory, which is inspiring, challenging, yes, but also inspiring. So please come ask some questions of Jackie or myself or each other. Two mics.
So just to get us started, David Brubaker, really appreciated, Jackie, your presence the last number of months and working with you. Belonging, relationship, and power, we tend to be pretty comfortable with the first two and less comfortable with the third. I thought it was kind of unique to Mennonites until I started working with other traditions. And I remember once a lead pastor, not Mennonite, saying to me, "I really don't have any power, I'm just the lead pastor." So how can we help ourselves be more honest about power and how it's distributed?
Thank you, Dave. That is such a great question, and you're right. I think power, we all have power at some point in time. It's just some people have more power than others. In the case of EMU, whiteness, and in our nation, I mean, this is not only a uniqueness of EMU, but whiteness, for example, and heteronormativity are powerful because they are the norm. It's what is expected. Those are the people that historically have had the most opportunity and pathways to success. And so our challenge is, if we want to really share our power, the first step would be really being authentic about recognizing the power we have. And that's not always as easy, right? Because again, when you're in those positions of privilege and power and those spaces, you don't really see that privilege and power that you have. I think COVID has helped us see, for example, a lot of disparities in the area of healthcare inequities, in the area of academic success, in the area of leadership within organizations and who gets what jobs. And so when we're talking about power, the first step is recognizing the power we have. I think the second big challenge is recognizing the privilege that has come with that power. And we don't always do a good job at that, right? Me included. And what does that mean is I may not have had a role, for example, in the high levels of racism that have filtered through every single one of our institutions, including EMU on occasions. mostly at an implicit, unconscious level. But I certainly, as a white person, may have benefited and have benefited from those privileges. And so it doesn't have to do with whether I participated actively in making the US and EMU be what it is today, but how have I benefited from that, and what is my willingness to say, how can I share some of that benefit and privilege, and how do I change structures and policy and systems within EMU and the organization so that we can actually all then be able to benefit from whatever privilege each one of us has enjoyed. And so it really is a cultural shift, and that is hard. However, I have no faith that we can do it together, because I've seen all the incredible things that EMU has done in the last decade in terms of real challenges at every other level, financially and many other ways. So power is at the core of it. When you're talking about racism, when you're talking about gender identity and discrimination, the real struggle underneath it is really our power. We don't want to let go of it. And so how do we live into our mission of together holding each other accountable and really striving to become more equitable in everything we do? And so that's the short answer, but happy to talk more about it later.
I'm Don Tyson from the Masters in Nursing program, and I'm monitoring the over 100 participants that are joining by Zoom. So a virtual question, how does DEI fit in with the Bible and with EMU being a Christian and Anabaptist school?
Thank you for that question, whoever asked it. I think it's at the core. I think it's at the core. I mean, if you see what Christ did and Jesus did and his actions, it was all about really equity, equality, love, love for Christ, love for each other. So how can we follow that discipleship and really be in that connection with God and Christ if we're not following that role modeling of treating each other with that love that we all should really deserve and enjoy as part of sharing a common humanity? So I actually think DEI, I mean, Christianity, I think it's at the core. And one of the reasons, and I may have shared this for those of you who were in my committee when I was applying for the job, that really spoke to me was precisely that it was a faith-based institution. Although many public universities claim and do social justice and equity and equality, the part that is harder for them to do is actually to institutionalize it, because it's not in their vision and mission in the same way we can name it. And we can name it because we're a private, faith-based institution. And naming, for me, is a very important component of how we advance things. So we don't need to tiptoe around love and God and equity and having a community of faith, because we are a faith-based institution. And so in many ways, it is actually easier for us to live into that vision than for other entities, because we already have it embedded on who we are in terms of who we follow. And I will even take it one step farther and say, even for those who are not Christian, that are Muslims, that are Hindus, it's also about the values that being a Christian actually means. And those values actually apply to all humans, regardless of who you are worshiping or who you are not. And so having that Christian faith is what allows us to extend our welcoming to others, even in the case where they're not Christian. So for me, that was a big draw for EMU, and that's how I see religion and faith and Christ being at the center of DEI and everything we do.
All right, in the interest of time, maybe one last question for Jackie. This has been a good discussion. Yes, go ahead. Don, you got another?
This is from Bill Goldberg. The other one was anonymous. Where does religious equity fit into your thoughts and ideas, especially at a Christian college that currently can only hire full-time faculty who are Christian? How can you push for religious equity as much as racial equity and gender sexual equity? How can you make people understand that pushing for equity is not a zero-sum game where you can only push for equity for one group?
Yes, thanks. And that's also an extremely important question. And like I said, small step, incremental step, big dream. I think our dream is to get to a full inclusiveness. We have had policies already, even during the summer, I know for non-tenured tracks. There was a committee who worked really hard at actually expanding and flexibilizing, still keeping the Mennonite Anabaptist foundation of our values, but also removing from the sections of the faith-based statement that we signed were adapted so that it was clear that you did not have to be or follow an Anabaptist Mennonite faith-based in religious organization or be part of a Mennonite congregation to actually come and work for EMU. So there is a lot of work to do, and that is a big area that conversations are happening. And again, for me, the way this thing's happening is by all of you posing those questions, bringing them to the surface, bringing them to the table, so that then we can figure out how do we have these conversations, where are we at, where is the community at, and how do we move forward together with a common goal as to where we want to be. So we don't have everything fully already done. That's why we are working towards becoming fully a community that is fully belonging and inclusive. But we will get there, and we will get there because of all the questions and concerns and issues that everyone is continually raising.
I see Tim Seidel is here today. This particular question has been moving forward. Tim, as director of the Center for Interfaith Engagement, has already brought a proposal to President's Cabinet in late spring, which we have spent time on, and we will be re-engaging with that in a focused way this fall. Please help me in saying thank you to Jackie for this time together.